So hi, everyone. My name is Roberto Castillo. I'm an assistant professor at the Department of Cultural Studies at Lingnan University. And today I'm going to be moderating our 8th online mini symposium for the Chinese in Africa, Africans in China Research Network. The title of the symposium today is Can Hong Kong Be Home? Sub-Saharan African Experiences of Belonging and Not Belonging. And I'm really happy to have today with us Fekadu Malede, Philip Tebe, and Gordon Matthews from the Chinese University, from the Department of Anthropology at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. I will let our first speaker of the night, who is Fekadu, start his talk. Fekadu's title is Foreign Catering Firm Owners and Home, Reflections on African Catering Services in Hong Kong. Okay, Fekadu, you have the ground for you.
Okay, thank you, Professor Roberto Castillo and other organizers of this panel and my panel members. So I will be talking about foreign catering firm owners and home and reflections on African catering service in Hong Kong. So before I directly jump into what I'm talking about, I would like to make something clear here. When I am using the term Africa, I'm referring to sub-Saharan Africans, and by using Africa for sub-Saharan Africans, I'm not still denying that there is a difference between among the countries within these regions, but anyway, I'm using this term, these differences in this region, sub-Saharan Africa, in mind. So before I directly jump into my main points, I would like to give some kind of introduction to the points that I am going to discuss. So in the spring of 2020, when I was incoming Ethiopian PhD student, all I asked the internet and friends alike was, is there Ethiopian restaurant in Hong Kong? Friends tell me about Ethiopia, about the food they ate at the event organized by the school in PolyU, with little to information about the catering firm and the owner and their livelihoods. Whereas the internet introduced me with few articles from South China Morning Post. For example, in 2014, South China Morning Post featured Ethiopian chef who introduced Ethiopian cuisine to Hong Kong through a pop-up kitchen called Eat Ethio, but without deep diving into her livelihoods. And in 2013 and 2018, South China Morning Post has published rather eye-opening articles. These articles, though they mainly discuss the menus of the restaurants they featured, they in passing mention the discriminatory local culture in Hong Kong and how Africans face difficulty in getting employment and in running their own catering firms. Once I came to Hong Kong, once settled in Hong Kong, I visited African Coffee and Tea with a big hope of eating injera, because I was told, this is a place where I could get Ethiopian food. Upon entering the cafe, one can see different kinds of Ethiopian coffee, and from the menu, you can see Ethiopian foods. And one of commonly eaten Ethiopian food, which is called beef stew, was included in the menu, but with a little Asian twist here. Because this food is served with injera in Ethiopia, and in this place it's served with rice. So when I get a chance, I asked the owner of this cafe, don't you cook injera? She replied to me, I had Ethiopian chef working for me, and I used to cook injera and some varieties of Ethiopian food in the past. However, I couldn't get enough customers that come to my place to eat Ethiopian food daily. Hence, I stopped doing that and my chef had to leave. Now I cook Ethiopian food only on occasions when ordered by organizations in group of individuals. I can make coffee Ethiopian style. Even I can make burger with injera that's big enough for family of 3 or 4. This is interesting conversation because the owner of this cafe is from Hong Kong, so that she could easily overcome the racial prejudice and financial setback. But her main problem is to find enough number of customers that make her business sustainable. Then I met a Ghanaian friend who used to invest in guest house in guest house business in Chenkin Mansions. We used to frequently meet and talk. And one day, right in the middle of our conversation, I asked him about African restaurants in Hong Kong. Pointing to the line of shops inside Chenking mansions, he said, there was Ethiopian girl who used to sell injera right there. Me and my friends used to eat injera, buying from her, and we liked it. Now her shop is closed, and I don't know where she is. I miss injera, man, he smiled. After a little pause, he went on to say, now there are only two Ghanaian and one Nigerian restaurant in Chenking mansions, or else you can go to African coffee and tea at Ocean Park. Since then, I started regularly visiting the three restaurants inside Chenking mansions, striking conversations with the owners at times, and I became well acquainted with the owner of Ghana Locals, who is called Tess. During my visits, I observed these restaurants had almost no customers on weekdays, and while they were relatively busy on weekends. Then I asked, how do these restaurant owners sustain their livelihoods with such low customer turnout? And given this, do they consider Hong Kong as a home? Then I arranged in-depth discussion with S about her life and livelihoods in Hong Kong. Then I employed a three-pronged approach to frame my analysis, which include assets, vulnerability, context, and strategies. And I believe this three-pronged approach gives us insight into how these African catering firm owners feel Hong Kong as a home. The first thing is about their assets. Assets are all human financial capital and financial, physical, and social capitals that people draw on to pursue livelihoods. So as for human capital, African restaurant owners may have a good cooking skill and experience acquired before coming to Hong Kong. Tess, for example, wanted to become a chef and went to cooking school when she was in Ghana. After she came to Hong Kong, hired by a shipping company, she used her private kitchen to cook African food for a small circle of customers. And Hong Kong holds opportunity for Africans like this, a conducive learning environment to improve their cooking skills for a variety of cuisines, either by going to school or as a way of self-learning. The prevalence and adoption and use of technology in Hong Kong plays a vital role in building human and social capitals for African entrepreneurs. In addition to access to information relating to their livelihoods, this enabled African entrepreneurs to build and maintain connection with their customers, families, and friends. For example, Tess widely used Facebook and Instagram networks to promote her special recipes, interact with their customers. She said, usually when new people come to my place, they bring with them a picture which is taken from Facebook or Instagram of a food they want to eat. Besides, churches have important place in the lives of Africans. Hong Kong is tolerant of diverse religions, and the existence of churches makes it easier for Africans to build social capital. An informant, for example, told me he could make friends regardless of race and culture from church fellowship. He said that is even the best place to get a Chinese wife. Among infrastructural facilities that constitute physical capitals and facilitate the livelihoods of Africans is transport network and availability. Hong Kong is well known for its well-connected transport network and availability of different transport modalities that enable fast and safe commuting to and from work. For example, the residential and workplace of Tess is well connected with fast and convenient transport networks with 24 hours of bus service and the chance of alternating between MTR and taxi. However, there are irregularities when using transport facilities. An informant, for example, told me taxi drivers are the most racist in Hong Kong. I sometimes want to use taxi when I am very tired or late or if it's raining. However, some taxi drivers don't stop for me, while some others give priority for local passengers. Another aspect of physical capital vital for the lives of Africans is access to residential place. As revealed by some research reports and from the experience of my informants, renting apartment in Hong Kong is somewhat difficult for Africans because most and by no means all Hong Kongers prefer not to rent their apartments to Africans for perceived and actual reasons. At the level of perception, some Hong Kongers think all Africans are drug dealers and generally involved in illegal or semi-illegal activities and hence should be avoided at any cost. So most Africans have a hard time obtaining residential apartments or staying in apartment for a relatively longer period. However, an informant told me, you can partially overcome this problem if you can take a good care of the apartment that you have once rented. This way, you may increase your chance of staying in one place for a longer period because you can build a good relationship with your landlord. As for financial capital, Africans should rely on their own startup capital from their own saving or from the saving of their family and friends. But once a business is started in Hong Kong, all the necessary documents are fulfilled, Hong Kong has a good credit service that does not discriminate African borrowers. This, for example, states, if I want, I can get a loan with one phone call. Hong Kong government and banks encourage business, and they don't discriminate foreigners when providing loans. But I don't want it because repaying a loan for 6, 7, and more years with interest is really painful. Therefore, I save and rely on my own money or try to borrow from my husband. So, vulnerability contexts. Vulnerability contexts are social, political, economic, and technological contexts that either constrain or enhance the livelihoods of African catering firm owners and thereby affect feeling of home. This interlinks contexts in Africa and Hong Kong. For example, my informants import coffee, spices, and resources like cassava and yams from Africa, while they procure meat, fresh vegetables, and legumes in Hong Kong. Resources that are imported from Africa are highly advantageous because of cheap cost and a very good exchange rate between Hong Kong dollar and African currencies without being affected by inflation. And inflation in Hong Kong's market is almost non-existent. Test says, for example, looking back at 15 years ago, the prices are almost the same. And if there is any, it's like $1 or $2 change. The price of vegetables is especially stable, while meat products are subject to price change by seasons. But in general, its impact on my business is almost none. On the other side, shipping cost for raw materials is highly expensive. For example, Tess says, the shipping cost is 10 times that of the raw materials. The cost is calculated per kilogram, and one package should have a maximum limit of 45 kilograms. If it's a little higher than that, I will have to pay as if I was shipping two packages. Be that as it may, legally registered African firms operate in a less competitive market, in a less competitive context in Hong Kong, and with significant support from Hong Kong government. Tess, for example, states that she has around 10 competitors, including private pop-up kitchens and unregistered service providers. But she says her business is advantageous because it's legally registered and recognized by Hong Kong authorities. This makes it eligible to receive financial and other kinds of benefit package from the government and subject to periodic visits by officials for hygienic inspections. Hong Kong's institutions influence the livelihoods of these Africans in two contradicting ways. On the one hand, institutions like Hong Kong's Food and Environmental Hygiene Department favor Africans, thinking that they are foreigners with little cultural knowledge that need positive reinforcement in their business operations. On the other hand, African business suffer discriminatory practices because of deep-seated prejudice of Hong Kong banks against business located in Chengdu mansions. For example, test conference, having all the required documents at hand, when I apply to open a business bank account, the banks usually tell me to wait. But it's more than 8 months now, and I don't know how long I should wait. Other people told me that the reason is the fact that my business is in Chengdu mansions, because bankers don't believe that a business in Chengdu mansions is a sustainable business. This passive discrimination harms small firms. For example, Tesco could not create partnership with delivery and transport companies such as Uber and Foodpanda, and could not import important beverages from Africa due merely to lack of business account. It is, however, interesting to note that some Hong Kong institutions encourage foreigners' business with, for example, easier licensing procedures. Another challenge for African catering firms comes from the local culture. An informant told me, and I quote, there is this thinking embedded in the local culture. They think anything African is not clean and tidy. Neither is the food. Even if some are brave enough to transcend this prejudice and want to try African food, they are too shy and scared to come to changing mansions. On the plus side, however, the local culture which is highly associated with the use of online, social, and mainstream media provides a fertile ground for catering firms to thrive. Taste, for example, has almost zero promotion costs as her recipes are mostly promoted by local social and mainstream media. She recounts at one day, people from Apple Daily came and talked to me. They took photos and videos of varieties of foods, the menu, and the kitchen that show how the food is made, its quality and hygiene. The media has many followers, so the video alone has got more than 100,000 views on YouTube. Then the locals come and ask me to give them fufu. I think they saw it from that video. Furthermore, the pandemic is another source of shocks for the livelihoods of these Africans. Rules of restrictions and social distancing reduce the flow of customers and the flow of people between Hong Kong and Africa. The test, for example, was fined 50,000 Hong Kong dollars for her customers once breached social distancing rules without her notice. When she started this business, Tess had 50,000 HKD startup capital. So paying this amount of money as a penalty significantly affects the performance of small business. But on the bright side, these African firms were not excluded from the government support that were meant to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on small business in Hong Kong. Then strategies. As a strategy to reduce shipping costs, my informants solicit help from fellow African passengers who travel to Hong Kong to bring them small package of raw materials. But now the pandemic affected the movement of people so that they have no options other than bearing the high shipping cost until the pandemic stabilizes. As far as the local culture is concerned, African restaurant owners use different strategies. One thing they do is to explain to the locals about the food and how it is prepared whenever they get a chance. For example, Tess says, when new locals come to my shop, I will explain everything to them, how I prepare the foods, the special ingredients, the recipes, and so on. And I will invite them to have a look at my kitchen. That way, I try to alleviate their fears about the hygiene and cleanliness. Besides, Africans make use of their existing networks with the locals or with other African professionals that work and live in Hong Kong to create awareness about African food. African business people and professionals bring their colleagues and friends, including locals, to African restaurants whenever they organize social events. Thereby, the locals will become aware of African food. And the intermarriage between Africans and Hong Kong women is also important in this regard. Africans will cook for their spouse at home and bring them to this place sometimes. This makes Hong Kong wives aware about African foods, who in turn tell their friends and families. An informant told me this is perhaps the most effective strategy so far because most Hong Kong wives now think that African food is healthy and organic, even healthier than Chinese food. Another strategy Africans use to overcome special prejudice is by trying to understand the circumstance of locals who display racist behaviors. An informant told me when he was new in Hong Kong, he used to get offended when faced with racist encounters. Afterwards, he said he came to understand that only those individuals who with no travel history out of Hong Kong, and perhaps those who are less educated, would have racist tendencies and dispositions. So most Africans now try to be sensitive to the circumstance of such locals rather than being offended by their behaviors or acts. What matters for these Africans is whether this racism is inherent in Hong Kong's institutions or not. At a micro level interaction, to use my informant's words, they don't care. Gordon Matthews has also indicated this kind of attitudes by Africans in Guangzhou in his book published in 2017. So, as a conclusion, most Africans think they are sojourning in Hong Kong. They consider Hong Kong as a transiting home, as a bridge that connects their future somewhere else and their present in Hong Kong. Most of them have long-term aspiration of moving back to their home countries or somewhere else where they can permanently settle after fulfilling their livelihood missions in Hong Kong. For this reason, They believe that the challenges that Hong Kong pose on their lives and livelihoods is not totally unbearable. It goes without saying, the city also provides ample opportunities indispensable for these Africans to fulfill their future aspiration. For example, Tess' final destination will be in Ghana, where she aspires to open a big restaurant with a chain that connects Ghana with Hong Kong. But until then, she says, Hong Kong is my second home. Thank you very much.